Okay, can you all hear that when it
Yes.
says?
Yep.
Okay.
All good.
All right. So anybody want to say anything relevant to bite-sized wisdom? You know, a little bit of wisdom, tiny little tidbit of wisdom, or anybody have that? At the risk of going close to the boundary of what a person should say or not, some people have shared a saying that's going around among certain people. And I will share it because I think it actually is wisdom. The saying is, live your life such that the whole world won't celebrate if you lose your job.
I'm sorry, what was the last part, Rabbi? This whole world won't celebrate when what?
If you lose your job. So live your life in such a way that you know, it will not happen. So and that, I think that makes sense in general.
Was that said by Hillel or Shammai?
Yeah. On that, that's what I'm trying to say. On that point, they agreed. On that point, that was one of the five things in the tradition that they actually agreed on. So, we're going to have more discussion about that in the Talmud class. Please, there, in case anybody is interested.
I also heard one that to get the full COVID, to get the full 2020 experience, you experience getting COVID, losing your job, and then getting evicted from the house you live in.
Hi.
Getting the full 2020.
That's it. Right. All right. That's not such a funny joke. Because unfortunately,
no, not for ordinary
that actually
people.
happens to people who have a problem with that. I'm trying to find, where was that thing that I'm supposed to? Here it is. I want to make sure I get. Oh, look at that! It's on. Good. I did hear it. Good. The chimes.
I turned it on, so probably.
You heard. That's because I didn't turn it on. So good. Thank you, as always.
Oh yeah.
All right. So anyway, we're still in Mishnah 12. For those of you who like to race forward and cut to the chase, too bad. And Craig just joined us. Here's Beryl. And Craig suggested a reading last week to see this whole set of phrases as very much connected one to the other and leading to a punchline. Right, so we had the loving peace, running after peace, loving other creatures, other human beings, and umekarvan la Torah, and drawing them near to the Torah. So Craig, you're here, so I don't want to speak too much for you, but remember you started saying something about how that last part was really the key. You want to just say it again? Are you ready?
Tell me again where you are, please.
Yeah. Mishnah 12, chapter 1, Mishnah 12.
And to me, looking at it, that you need to, love peace. You have to establish peace and to make it conducive to bring the coming to Torah.
Okay, so in other words, these are preconditions, and for any hope of fulfilling that last directive, that last aspiration, you need the other pieces put in place.
Yeah.
So that would be one way to read it. But still, in the end, that last piece says that each and every one of us who hears Hillel's words should be drawn to this mission, right? We should be loving peace. We should be pursuing peace. We should be loving other people. We should be drawing them to Torah. How do people feel about that last piece? Bill.
Well, Rabbi Shapiro has an interesting take on that last line.
Okay.
And it sort of speaks directly to what I think you were implying in your question. He says in a note, bringing people to Torah is not bringing them to religion, but to wisdom. It is one thing to convince others of what you know. is quite another to step with them into what is unknown to you both.
Okay.
I
so
find that
definitely-
a
That
rather
is good. That's
ordinary
good.
take.
Okay, so he's addressing this question. To put it in a more generalized way, because he's answering the question. A pre-question was, what is this Torah that Hillel is talking about? Right. So Rami Shapiro is saying, don't think it means X, it means Y. But what does it mean to each and every one of us? I mean, again, at
My
this present,
my
at
my
this-
own take.
one second.
Sure.
Give me just half a second more.
Sure.
At this point in our very, very complicated moment in our society, we're still, however, whatever sides we're on, we're very, very conscious of the rift, right? We're very conscious of actually the difficulty. People have talked about it all the time, whether heatedly or mournfully. It's hard to talk to the other side. It's hard to talk to the people that don't see things the way you see them. And I think that that's a generalization that applies quite accurately to so many people. And how do we want to just turn off the noise and just, I love peace, so I'm going to never talk about any of the stuff that brings up emotions and arguments and
Yeah.
that would be one way to love peace. But what would it mean to say, I want to try to bring this other person to Torah, right? So that's a reaching out and a drawing toward. I want to draw that person towards something that I find important. So I want to just push that as what Hillel is saying, and we might in the end say, I don't want to do that. But what does he say that we could relate to or struggle with? So Bill, back to you. You wanted to say something.
I don't, in light of what you just said, I don't know if this has anything particularly to add, but my understanding of that is to bring people closer to God. What exactly that means and how that would exactly work out. On the one hand, of course, you can think of Christian missionaries, out there to bring people to Jesus. Is Jesus your savior, and that kind of thing. That's not what I have in mind. Leave aside the Jesus part. It's not what I have in mind. But somehow, through one's own example, through one's own life, through sharing the joy that one gets, one hopes, out of a relationship with God, to enable them, if they're interested, and if they can respond to this, to derive the same satisfaction, the same joy from relating to God. I think of a couple of people that I know, former colleagues, who were atheists. They weren't pushing it. They weren't trying to beat everybody up. They just didn't believe in God. And I always felt deeply sorry for them that they had missed out on this experience of attempting to relate to God that I've had for almost all my life, except for a very short period in graduate school. And how to do that, I don't know. But that's what bringing people close to Torah, obviously not just to God in the general, Dalai Lama kind of thing, but from a Jewish perspective as well. But how to implement that, I don't know.
Sarita and then John, and then Josie,
So,
and then Jen.
trying to also interpret these together. To me, what does Torah teach us? The Torah teaches us to love thy neighbor as thyself. And so here, you're loving peace. That is sort of, to me, part of the precondition or part of what helps you in thinking about your fellow people, and then engaging with people in such a way to bring other people to that same loving your fellow person. So and it's Hillel saying this, so that to me seems like where it might be going. This is because this doesn't strike me as proselytizing. This is a universal message. This isn't just love your fellow Jew. This applies to everybody. So that's how I see that drawing near to Torah, sort of helping other people to come at this from the same direction, so that people are loving each other and respecting each other.
Okay, John?
The proselytizing part of it really makes me uncomfortable. Actually, I'm not. I don't to proselytize in any way, or to say draw someone else close to the Torah, put you in a position where you have the truth that the other people you're trying to spread to other people. I wish it said bring yourself to Torah. I think that's hard enough. I mean, that's hard enough. So I'm not comfortable. It's weird. I'm not comfortable with this idea. I've never been comfortable with the Christian idea of proselytizing or the whole idea of proselytizing. I think if people are drawn to something, they're drawn because they're drawn to it. It's not because of something you said or you do. I don't think you live your life as an example to others. I think you try to live a good life.
Helen, can you mute yourself, please?
I got it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I hear you. Josie.
I'm going to argue with Rabbi Shapiro, because I have his book as well. That
You have his email?
Huh?
You have his email?
No, but I don't see how you can say that bringing people to Torah is not bringing them to religion. I mean, if someone's, as Bill pointed out, a committed atheist, and you say to them, read the Torah, they're going to say, this is full of religion. I don't want to read this stuff. And but when I get his email, I'll tell him so. And I think this ending phrase is very mystical. Quite another step with them, bring them into what is unknown to you both, because that takes away the idea that I have the knowledge of the true.
We lost you. Something happened. I didn't hear the rest of what you said. I have the knowledge of the true, and then you became silent. Why can't I hear you?
I think our connection's not great.
You're coming in and out, Josie.
Oh yeah, I have this problem with my I'm just saying the idea that you step with the other person into what is unknown to you both is very mystical, and I like the way that's phrased.
And that's very much addressing John's discomfort.
Yeah.
Shapiro is also very, very wary of that kind of thing. I know, you don't know. Let me tell you. So he tries to make it mutual. Yes.
But
Jen.
isn't that true historically that Jews did go out and seek converts at one point in our history?
Early on in the Hasmonean period, there was apparently an aggressive proselytizing, or not even proselytizing. It was basically forcing people to convert. As the Hasmonean kings spread, expanded the Jewish monarchy, the Jewish territories, they conquered different peoples. And in those days, when you conquered a people, there was two ways of doing it. One way is, if I conquer you, that means you join my religion and my people, and so on and so forth. Or there were other empires that said, you know what, it's better for us not to try to force everybody to be the same. But the Hasmonean leadership, apparently, it's hard to tell. It's a little ambiguous in the evidence, but apparently they did impose Judaism where they had victories. Remember, the Hasmoneans are pre-rabbinic. By the time you get to the rabbinic period, we're not proselytizing, and basically for the next 2,000 years, we don't proselytize.
Thank you.
I got a free toast.
I want to get Jen a chance to speak, and then we'll go around some more. Yeah. You have to unmute.
Okay, sorry. So I agree with John as an apprehensive about proselytizing. But I think we also have not defined by what Torah are we talking about exactly. I still haven't really heard a definition. Josie's saying if it absolutely involves God, it doesn't mean, I don't know if we're talking about particular teachings. Are we going to cherry pick a few teachings of the Torah that we want to share with everybody? Are we going to draw everybody in the world closer to the entirety of Jewish teaching? I mean, what are we exactly talking about?
That's my question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I'm wondering who has that answer.
Each one of us has that answer, and we all live it out. And then we find possibly other groups that join in seeing it the same way, and we work together. But that's exactly the way the world works. Different people and different groups decide to define terms a certain way and then operate accordingly. Where'd Helen go? Helen, there you are. You said you wanted to talk. And Lynn, you said you're raising your hand? Okay, Helen, then Lynn.
You know, in a way, it reminds me of the feeling I had about people who were not for someone who was preaching healing and peace and togetherness, and let's cure the hard feelings, let's not say the angry words. I couldn't understand why they didn't see it. Couldn't you? Don't you see the hostility that it's created by what this person is saying and doing? So in a sense, it's the same thing. I can't understand. Look how rich this is. Look how beautiful. Look how fulfilling it is in living. Don't you see it? And could you help me understand what is pulling you to what attracts you? What do you see in this person that keeps you loyal to him? I couldn't understand that. And in the sense that you got my picture.
Right, so Lynn and then Geraldine. And then we'll circle back to people who've already talked if they want to say more.
So I definitely don't have the answer, but in terms of definition of Torah, might it mean if you are living a life of loving peace and pursuing peace and loving mankind, might Torah mean your way of life and not necessarily what you believe in, but how you act because of what you believe in, and thereby bringing people into your group because you're sharing something special with them in terms of how you are with the world, how you interact with the world.
Okay.
I mean, it's because of Torah, but it would be beyond that, I think. Maybe just instead of just read this, it would be let's do this together.
Okay, good, thank you. Geraldine.
I guess I kind of go along with what Helen and what Lynn just said. I think sometimes people don't realize in themselves that they really are doing quote unquote Torah things. They don't see it in themselves, and to make them aware that who they are and what they do for the world or the community or their families or their friends is believing in Torah in their way. They're just not making the connection between the two.
Okay, Sarita, you've been patient, thank you. And Adam, it's great that you're trying to bring your dog closer to Torah. I appreciate that. I agree with you. Yeah.
So I think that what's one of the things that I was trying to grapple with is that this drawing near doesn't say to teach, doesn't say to hammer anybody over the head. And the way to draw people near is not to criticize them, not to tell them that they're doing anything wrong, not to look down on them and disparage them, but in fact to try and embody this loving peace, you know, a sense of acceptance, if not love, then acceptance of the other person, so that the other person might then be able to accept you as well. So I see that not really as, that is to me, that is then drawing near and not, I guess I see proselytizing as something different than that. So I think that's what I was trying to get to, which is really in line with, I think, Lynn, what you were talking about as well.
So the famous story that we've already mentioned, and is pretty famous, as I say, of Hillel himself with the standing on one foot. The whole full picture of that story is that the person who comes to Hillel, and before that he came to Shammai, and Shammai chased him away. He comes to Hillel and he's not Jewish, and he says, "I will convert if you can teach me the Torah on one foot." So, and then Hillel does not chase him away and is not, outraged by this kind of very disrespectful way of talking about an unbelievably rich and full tradition. And what does he say? He says, "Sure, let me give it a shot." And he says, "Don't do to anybody else what you wouldn't want done to yourself. Don't treat anybody else in a way that you wouldn't want to be treated." He says that's the whole Torah, and all of the rest is commentary. And that person converts. So that's a story of Hillel actually bringing a person closer to Torah. And afterwards, the Talmud says that and there's other stories that there's, but the kindness and the gentleness of Hillel, say these converts, because there's more than one story there, brought us under the wings of the Shekhinah. Right? Not the theological argumentation, not the the brilliant insights into the Torah. His kindness and humble goodness brought us under the wings of the divine presence. So a little bit of what some of you have said, that he does it without being dogmatic, without being in any way demeaning, and yet he's actually saying something which is very strong and which puts the onus back on that questioner. Are you willing not to treat other people the way you wouldn't want to be treated? And as I've said many times before, there's an underlying criticism there. When you're asking me that kind of question, that kind of simple-minded question, would you like it if somebody asked you about your most precious commitments? Okay, give it to me in a soundbite. Give me your elevator speech for the meaning of life. Is that the way you would want to be confronted? So he puts it actually back into his own responsibility for seeking out what's important and what's not. Jen.
So I'm happy with that if we're equally happy with the guy deciding to live his life not Jewishly, not become a Jew, but still just say, yeah, you're right, I will not do to other people what I don't want done to me. Are we still happy with that ending, or is it only a happy ending if the guy becomes Jewish?
So yeah, I think that's one of the things that the story predicates at the beginning is Hillel didn't go to him. He came to Hillel. And he says, I'm interested in converting, but you gotta show me. So
I get that. I get he's not going out and handing out annoying pamphlets to people. I'm totally yay Hillel for him. But I still want to know, do we only like this story because the guy converts, or is this still a good story if the guy doesn't become Jewish and goes out and lives a better life regardless? Like, was that enough of a confrontation with the Torah to have the idea that he shouldn't do to others what he doesn't want done to him?
So Lynn and then Helen.
So you probably have heard, my sister-in-law is very observant, and she taught in a Schechter school for many years. And before I converted, or sort of while I was in the process, very kindly and very, open-heartedly said to me, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's better in the eyes of God to live as a good person. But once you become Jewish, you have to live as a Jew and follow all the laws. And it's better for you if you're going to sort of do this. She didn't say it this way, but if you're going to do it half-assed, you're down a peg in the eyes of God. So I don't know what teachings that comes from. It meant a lot to me to hear her say that, but does that conflict with what we're talking about here? Or is there something, is there a teaching that says that, Rabbi, or? Yeah,
for sure. For sure. We real quick before I get to Helen, we have a settled halacha, right? A law, which actually is very unusual to talk about when we're talking about these kinds of moralistic theological ideas. But the Talmud records, I think it's Rabbi Yehuda who says, halacha chasidei umot haolam yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. That all decent people in the nations of the world have a portion in the world to come. They're all going to heaven. This is like, you don't have to get saved. As long as you don't throw it away, everybody's saved. So then the Talmud says, so when people come to convert, you should say, what do you need this for? You're doing fine. If you don't need this in order to qualify, right? In order to register to vote or something like that. You're fine. So yes, that's a deep ancient teaching in our tradition, which definitely speaks to Jen's saying, so what? So you really have to convert, otherwise you're. But to be honest, in terms of the way people are, it shouldn't be shocking that there are plenty of Jews throughout history who have believed that Jews are number one, and everybody else is damaged goods. Are we not human? Are we not susceptible to exceptionalism and feeling that we want to be uppity and that and soft racism, if not hard racism? For sure. So this is a struggle throughout Jewish history. How do you actually see the diversity of the world? Helen.
I think it's more important to know what happens to this human being who has accepted Torah. Is his life richer? Is the loneliness gone? Is the pain easier to handle? Is there someone there that you can turn to? And that is, in effect, being Jewish.
So good, thank you. That's I just want to sort of like put a stamp of conclusion on that. That's a good way to end. Last week, Abraham is called to be the first Jew and told that the point is be a blessing. And the end of the Torah says, you have a choice, blessing or curse, life or death. The Torah is supposed to be a tree of life. It's supposed to help you live. So when I say, what kind of Torah are we talking about? How do we define Torah? This is one of the criteria that we need to apply. And I will say just it's something I've said many, many times. The Jewish people right now are in a Kulturkampf. We are in a cultural, religious war. And it's not clear who's going to define Judaism for the future. There are too many people who, in my eyes, are succeeding in defining Judaism in a narrow way, in a prejudiced way, in a way that misses a lot of the points that Helen was just saying. And I think that they're gaining ground, and I think that they are a threat to the future of Judaism and the Jewish people. And it's on us. It's on us to create a vibrant, meaningful, strong Judaism that's different. It's not just a personal thing, because if we have children that are going to grow up, or if we have people that we care about in the next generation, where are they going to go? What kind of Judaism are they going to be fed? What kind of Judaism are they going to, when they Google it, how many different websites are they going to find right at the beginning that's going to tell them about a Judaism that is, in my eyes, disgusting and repugnant? We have a lot of work to do. And that's part of our challenge to bring people closer to Torah. How we define that Torah, and that's an ongoing struggle. All right, Yesher Koach for today, and looking forward to continuing. Zai Gesund.
Zai Gesund.
Yesher Koach.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Rabbi.